Our apologies for the slight delay in the start of this meeting. We had a slight technical issue, which our fantastic IT people have now sorted out, so that's great. And I'd like to welcome everybody to this hybrid planning committee meeting. The meeting is being broadcast and recorded, and if there are any technical issues, which like we had earlier, please bear with us. Please note the normal rules of debate apply, including the requirement for you to be present for the duration of the whole debate. So if you're absent for any part of the debate, then you should abstain from voting. Obviously, only councillors that are in the room can vote on any item. Now, we're expecting speakers to talk to item 5 on the agenda, and I'd like to extend a welcome to you. So please, can you confirm that you're present when I call your name? Sorry, item 5 and 6, obviously. So on item 5, I have Mr. Ashley. Mr. Ashley, are you attending remotely?
Yeah, remote.
Thank you very much indeed. And Mr. Berg. Mr. Berg, thank you very much indeed. On item 6, I've got Mr. Andy Holly. Present. Thank you. And Mr. James Palmer. Thank you very much indeed. As I get to the relevant item, I'll explain to you what will happen and the rules of speaking. Now, to the first item on the agenda, which are apologies. Are there any apologies for absence? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have received apologies from Councillors Bidwell, Mrs Mackenzie, Skinner, Mrs Mattick, Angel, Barnard and Brown.
Thank you. Are there any other apologies? Okay. I can see the members of the committee are in attendance and your names will be recorded in the minutes as being present. Please can the clerk confirm if any members are joining remotely and if those members could confirm their attendance when Hannah calls your name. Thank you.
I have Councillor Bandari.
Present.
Councillor Hayden.
Present.
And Councillor Mossam.
Present.
That's everyone, Chair.
Thank you. Any other members present whose name hasn't been called? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is declarations of interest, which is the declarations of interest wording is set out in the agenda at item 3. If a member has a disclosable pecuniary interest or an affected interest to declare, please indicate and I'll come to you in turn. There are no declarations of interest. Thank you very much, members. The fourth item on the agenda is consideration of any urgent items. I haven't been notified of any?
No, none, Chair.
Thank you. So then we come to agenda item 5, which is Beaufort Park.
Minutes. You haven't done the minutes.
Oh, sorry, I haven't done.
The schedule is wrong.
Yeah, the schedule's wrong. Yeah, I need to, sorry, before I come to that item, I need to have a vote to confirm that the previous minutes are a correct record. Can I have a mover for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Virgo. Seconded, Councillor Birch. Does anybody have an issue with the minutes? All those in favour to approve the minutes, please show. Thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you, Vice Chair. Agenda item 5, which is Beaufort Park, South Road, Wokingham, which is erection of 226 homes, including associated on-site sang, with access route and open space and pedestrian cycle connections. Before I can start, can I check that the speakers of this item are still present? Mr. Ashley, you can hear this?
Yeah.
Thank you. And Mr. Berg's in the room, so that's fine. So would the planning officer like to talk us through the report, please?
I've registered to speak on Beaufort Park. You may have...
On Beaufort Park?
Yes.
Mr. Ashley and Mr. Berg, I have.
No.
Sorry, Mr. Ashley here, not speaking on Beaufort Park. I'm doing Bracknell Beaches.
Sorry, say that again?
I'm speaking on Bracknell Beaches.
I do beg your pardon, Mr. Ashley. I have it down here. What's your name, sir?
Mr. Holly, speaking on Beaufort Park.
Mr. Holly.
And?
So it's not Mr. Ashley, it's Mr. Holly. And James Palmer. Sorry, James. Sorry, Mr. Holly. just a typo on my my agenda, but thank you for clearing that up. Okay, so I have Mr. Holly and Mr. Palmer for Beaufort Park, and Mr. And Mr. Oh, Mr. Ashley and Mr. Berg for Bracknell Beach. Is that right? So I've just got them wrong way round. That's all it is. Okay. Right. So what we do is we hear the officer's recommendation, and then I'll come to public speaking. Okay. Thank you. Over to you, Margaret.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sharing the screen.
Can you bring the microphone a bit?
Yes, is that better? Right, thank you. This is a full application for 226 residential. No. Thank you. Is that better? Without disconnecting. Yeah. Right, I'll start again. This is a full application. Is that better? Thank you. For 226 residential units, including 50% affordable housing, an on-site sang, open space, access from 9 Mile Ride and South Road, together with pedestrian and cycle routes through the site. Housing is a mix of detached, semi-detached and terraced houses and 24 two-bedroom apartments, which are within 6 two-storey apartment buildings. The bedroom mix of the units is 79 two-bedroom units, 94 three-bedroom units and 53 four-bedroom dwellings, and properties will be 2 and 3 storeys in height. The application is being reported to the Planning Committee because more than 5 objections have been received. And there's an aerial shot of the site and the area.
You have to bring it closer, Margaret. Still not. You bring it very, just round the side, very close.
I'm worried about disconnecting it. Is that better? Thank you. This site has been included as a draft allocation in the emerging local plan and has been formally approved as such by councillors at the extraordinary council meeting on 16th of March 2021. The emerging local plan supports the development of this site as an extension to the area of Bracknell by locating development adjacent to the existing office building, the crematorium and Great Hollands recreation ground, whilst retaining existing woodland along the southern perimeter of the site to enhance the site's function in separating Bracknell and Crowthorne. The application site, as we can see on the aerial shot, is well contained by mature trees on its boundaries, and development is proposed adjacent to nearby development, leaving the buffers to the boundaries and with a safeguarded habitat area and woodland to the west. A sang north of the residential development also protects the character of the area. The site is outside the settlement area, but as currently the local authority cannot demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable housing, development plan policies relevant to the supply of housing are considered to be out of date. This means that permission should be granted unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. I'll just put a layout plan up. As can be seen on the layout, the site will have 2 vehicular means of access. One here, the roundabout, that uses the existing roundabout serving TRL on 9 Mile Ride, and also an access onto South Road here. The access from South Road will serve 75 dwellings, and access to that point will be restricted by the layout, which is designed to prevent traffic cutting through the site from the roundabout to South Road. 3 character areas have been defined throughout the development, which are shown the different colours of buildings. The change in form of development across the site reflects the surrounding land, which ranges from heathland in the west to the more developed character in the east. The western portion of the site relates to that heathland and woodland, with the remaining relating to the residential area of Great Hollands and the existing office building, which is currently being redeveloped for residential use. Buildings will have contemporary architectural style. They will be brick built with 3 different brick tones used across the site to distinguish the character areas. The proposed sign is in the northwest part of the site, which is nice one, look. of this part of the site to there. And a play area will be provided within the southern part of the site in the retained woodland, and pedestrian and cycle links are provided throughout the development and across the front of the site to link from the TRO roundabout to allow access up into South Road and to the areas beyond. I'll show some of the elevations here. These are some of the larger focal point buildings on corner points of the site, where windows and doors are provided on each elevation. And also these some of the taller 3-storey properties that are being provided. And these are the apartment blocks, which are shown just as 2-storey buildings with 4 apartments within each section. Now we have some street scenes, which just shows some of the variety within the site along some of the main streets of the development. The development will result in the loss of approximately 11 hectares of woodland, and tree removal would mainly involve the loss of plantation woodland. The creation of the access road from 9 Mile Ride would also result in a small loss of deciduous woodland of 0.42 hectares. Tree planting is proposed as part of the proposal, comprising 637 new trees and new woodland edge planting. And although the trees proposed for removal have landscape and visual value, the vast majority comprise coniferous monoculture plantation. An area of retained woodland is proposed to the west of the residential development, and a 50-metre wide landscape buffer will be retained along the front boundary of the site with 9 Mile Ride. And the retention of the buffer along the boundary and retention of woodland to the west of the development would allow for the retention of strategic gap. The traffic impact from development is considered to be acceptable by our highways officers and will not result in capacity issues on the highways network. Traffic modelling has been carried out, and this takes into account existing traffic flows in the vicinity of the site and also projected future growth, including existing commitments and future housing allocations. The application has a shortfall in parking of 21 parking spaces, 12 to serve the apartments, which are in this section here and here, and a shortfall of 9 visitor parking spaces. The layout indicates a total of 15 parking spaces provided within the Sang car park, which is the area up here. There is currently no adopted parking standard for Sang, so the highway officer has discussed the amount of parking that is required based on popularity of current Sangs in the area. All dwellings will be provided with at least 1 EV space, and in addition 5 dual charger EV points will be provided in public areas of the site throughout the scheme, and biodiversity net gain of more than 10% can be achieved, to be secured through a 106 agreement. The site will change in character from greenfield land to a residential development, which will result in some change of landscape character. However, the proposed allocation of the site for residential in the development in the emerging local plan indicates acceptance that development could be accommodated in principle. The proposed development protects the strategic gap through the retention of strategic buffer, woodland and the Sang, and provides new landscaped areas and open space throughout the site. The application proposes that 113 of the 226 dwellings, which is 50%, will be provided as affordable housing. The policy compliant level of 25% will be secured by means of a 106 agreement, with the remaining 25% provided as a result of Homes England funding, and this exceeds the current policy requirement of 25% and also the 35% requirement set out in the emerging local plan. And this proposed mix includes a number of large social and affordable rented homes. The on-site Sang which will be created extends to approximately 5.5 hectares, which again exceeds the policy requirement in the SDP. In conclusion, the site has been allocated in the emerging local plan as suitable for residential development for up to 226 units. The pre-submission local plan, which included the proposed allocation, was approved for formal submission to the Secretary of State by an extraordinary meeting of the Council on 16th of March 2021. The allocation is proposed as part of a draft development plan which does not preclude the granting of planning permission at this stage. The provision of 50% of the units on site for affordable housing, including family homes, is considered to be a significant benefit in meeting acknowledged need of affordable housing. And in weighing the planning balance, it is not considered that any adverse impacts of granting permission for the development would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. And so accordingly, the application is recommended for approval. And the recommendation is set out in the main report, and also a supplementary report has been prepared, which includes additional information and conditions. And let's just scroll through some photos of the site and the area. This is one of the areas of the woodland within the site in its current state. And also here, which as it can be seen, most of the woodland is plantation, coniferous woodland. Also an area of the grassland around the site which would be protected from the development. And again, some of the gorse land which surrounds the site. This is the current TRL roundabout, which will serve TRL stage of development there, and then will also continue to serve this development to the right as it is in this photo. And this is a photo from the other direction approaching that roundabout, and the access to the site will be there from the left, opposite the site into the later stages of the TRL development. Again, this is part of the woodland along the front boundary, which will be retained as part of the woodland buffer to protect the strategic gap. And again, this is a view from the front of the site from Narmar Ride, looking into what will be protected and retained woodland, which shows the extent of the buffer that will be retained. And here is a view up Narmar Ride towards the to South Road, which is the junction that will be used to serve 75 dwellings. And another view down South Road from the development site, which also shows the area of woodland to the right and the verge where the access will be punched through, and the rest of the tree buffer retained there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, as I explained earlier, this application complies with our public speaking. So just to make sure I've got this right now, it's Mr. Holly to speak against the application, and Mr. Palmer speaking on behalf of the applicant. Gentlemen, the rules of our public speaking are as follows. You will each get 3 minutes in which to speak and state your case. That's 3 minutes of uninterrupted time to you. We're very strict on the 3 minutes. So as an aid to you, the only time you'll hear a voice is me at 2 minutes and 40 seconds, where I will tell you you've got 20 seconds. You can speak through that, but I'm just letting you know that you've got 20 seconds left. At 3 minutes, I will expect you to stop speaking, even if it's mid-sentence, I'm afraid. Following your submission, I will ask members if they have any questions that relate to what you've said. Once you've finished doing that, you can retake your seat, and of course then the same applies to Mr. Palmer. Do you understand that, gentlemen? Okay, fine. I think probably best if they come to the lectern.
Well, either or the seats at the front there or the lectern, whichever you prefer.
Would you rather sit or stand?
Stand, please.
Okay, then if you'd like to make your way to the lectern, sir. Sorry.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Almost.
Okay. You tell me when you're
I
ready.
am now.
You're ready. Okay, in which case your 3 minutes start now.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of the Crowthorne Village Action Group. Let's be clear, this site is not in the current approved plan. It is identified in the emerging local plan, but that is still going through the process of external examination. At the examination hearings, CVAC have argued strongly against its inclusion in the final version. The hearings are ongoing and the examiners haven't yet delivered their report. For this applicant to submit for planning whilst the examination is in process shows a disregard for the democratic process. This site sits in the gap between Bracknell and Crowthorne. Both the current core strategy and its replacement, the emerging local plan, make strong statements about the importance of protecting the strategic gaps separating Bracknell from surrounding villages. The emerging local plan, paragraph 1067, the criteria used for identification of these gaps and wedges is primarily based on the need to prevent coalescence rather than being related to landscape quality. So the planning officer's reference to a landscape buffer fails to address this need to prevent coalescence. Although nominally part of Great Hollands, this site has no road connection to Great Hollands. The road leads to Crowthorne. Naturally, residents will use facilities both in Crowthorne and in Bracknell, which is the very definition of coalescence. The Bracknell Forest Council plan, which is based on pledges made in the 2019 election, signed by Councillor Bettison and then Chief Executive Timothy Whedon, in its commitments on the environment, key objective number 1 is to protect our highly valued green spaces and strategic green gaps. Now, it's not a planning policy document, but I would hope that the pledges made to the electorate would have some importance for the members of this committee. It's an isolated location with no on-site facilities such as shops, schools or medical. Yes, Bracknell does need affordable housing, but this is not the location for it. The report makes clear there's insufficient parking. Without site facilities, car ownership will be essential. So that will lead to on-street parking, cluttering the street scene. There are over 100 objections from residents. Elected representatives of Bracknell Town Council recommend refusal. Crowthorne Parish Council recommend refusal. We ask that this committee supports those representatives and refuses this application. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. Well done. 5 seconds early. Members, do you have any questions of Mr. Holly with regards to his presentation? None online? Okay, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Holly. You can retake your seat.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Palmer? You understand, sir, that the same rules apply? I do. Great. Just put your microphone on. Okay, are you ready, sir?
I am.
Okay, your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. I'm James Palmer, Senior Development Manager at Southern Housing. This proposal will deliver the vision the Council has set out in its emerging plan for a high-quality landscape-led design. We are committed to delivering half of this scheme as affordable. We have included and given very careful consideration to the density of the proposal so that it represents the beautiful setting it is in and the surrounding developments. The scheme delivers over 5 hectares of open space known as SANG to be used publicly for the first time and a further 5 hectares of protected open space. We have provided views through the site and these are a key feature of the development. The design of the housing scheme enhances the local ecology by removing the monoculture of Scots pine plantation in the centre of the site and introduces accessible and richly diverse landscaped areas, including landscape play areas. The north of the site is currently degraded heathland and some deciduous woodland. Through careful design, this scheme will enable these areas to be retained, improved and deliver a 10% improvement in biodiversity net gain. We recognise the importance of retaining the visual gap in the settlements between Bracknell and Crowthorne village. Our proposals involve the retention of a 150-foot wide, deciduous, broad-leaved, natural species planted buffer along the entire southern boundary to 9 Mile Ride, along with the retention of woodland in the west. There will be no erosion of the visual separation between the two settlements. We have worked closely with the Council Highways team to carefully consider the impact on the road network, particularly South Road, and design a scheme that is appropriate in this regard. Our layout strikes the right balance between delivering ample parking and high-quality, well-landscaped environment. This includes 2 or 3 spaces for every new home, with the exception of the 2-bedroom affordable apartments, where a space and a half is provided, which we consider appropriate for this kind of dwelling. The scheme represents an excellent outcome in several other ways. 113 homes, half of the total will be affordable, double the amount required by policy. If the allocated Homes England grant funding can be secured by making a start on site before March 23, then the affordable housing will really meet unidentified housing need in the borough. There are
20 seconds.
There are 1,689 households on the council waiting list. The homes themselves will be sustainable and affordable to run, and we are working alongside an award-winning development partner, Hill, to bring these homes forward quickly. All homes can...
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions for Mr. Palmer? Right, I have Councillor Mackenzie Boyle and Councillor Birch. Would you like to come back, sir? Is it your colleague that's going to...
That's correct. Our planning consultant will be answering technical questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So the planning consultant, are you online, sir?
I am. Hello,
Okay.
Chair.
Hello, right. So you're just here to answer the questions. So first off, Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, sir. I think my microphone is on. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle, Crowthorne. Sir, you've spent a long time having a look around this area, and I'd like to know, in your ecological surveys you've done, can you tell me, are there any hazel trees? Have you found?
Not in the area, as I understand it, that is to be developed. The area where we're removing woodland trees is all the Scots plantation, is my understanding.
Why I'm asking this is that obviously a hazel tree would encourage the hazel dormouse, which is a protected species, sir. We have to make absolutely certain.
Councillor Birch.
Thank you. You mentioned density. What is your assessment of the density on the site, please?
So my understanding is that the density is 32 dwellings per hectare, and that's in line with the density of the surrounding sites, i.e. the TRL site to the south.
That was not the question I asked, thanks. Can I also ask then, and the previous speaker mentioned, if the grant funding from Homes England can be secured, is there any doubt that the grant funding from Homes England may not be secured?
Well, if we're very confident that if we get permission, we can start moving through, getting the conditions cleared, and then start on site in spring. That's the approach. If there were delays to permission being granted potentially today, then of course there might be issues with that. But we're relatively confident that we can achieve that date, subject to getting permission tonight.
Any other questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Sullivan. I'll now open up the floor to members for questions to officers. Thank you. Councillor Virgo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to everyone. Could I just ask Margaret something I'm confused at? The EVs, which I think is on 926, actually, in your report, does that mean, one, that the developer would only supply EVs if the applicant, if the house owner requires it and funds it? First question.
My understanding is that the infrastructure is provided by the developers on each unit, so they're provided before the owner is known. They're part of the infrastructure of the development.
Okay, the reason I ask it is not quite says that, does it? It says if the homeowner requires it, it says in the report.
The infrastructure is provided, but obviously it may be a householder doesn't wish to provide the charging for their own units, so the infrastructure is there, and then it would be up to each householder if they want to then use it.
Okay, then my second question, which lines up beautifully, I thought the national regulations is that they now have to supply those regardless.
I think the report in the informative does make reference to the new change in building regulations from June 2020, that that infrastructure will be provided on site, and that will come through the building regulations. So it won't be a voluntary matter. We will be expected to meet those national standards.
Okay, could I then suggest that that
I'm
clause
just
be
going to get
redrafted?
clarification on that question for you, Councillor. Hold on.
I was just going to try and provide some clarification, James, to highways. I think the case officer has covered it. Yes, the building regulation requirement will kick in, and so the requirement of that would be the requirement the development would have to meet to meet the obligation within the building regulation.
So just to clarify, there'll be, under this planning permission, there'll be effectively passive electric vehicle, so the infrastructure there, but following June, it'll be a requirement to have the actual charging point. Is that right?
That's how I understand it, yes.
Okay, Councillor Virgo, do you have another question?
I do. I'd just like to clarify that, Mr. Chairman, because I think that clause needs a little bit more drafting. Actually,
Well, it's the new building regulations.
Well, I would suggest that's very ambiguous, actually. So I've made my point. I know that I can't.
Yeah. Next question.
The next question really is something I don't understand, which is about the road design, which is 926. I don't quite understand how you can control these cars. That's why, unless I've misread this, actually.
Through your chair, James Turner again, Highways. In terms of, I think the question you're asking is around how is the road design influencing how the development is accessed and served. I think that's the question you're asking, Councillor.
Well, just to be clear, James, what I'm asking, it says that there's going to be some kind of restriction. I didn't quite understand restriction on vehicles going through.
Okay, I'll try and clarify that for you. I might ask the case officer if she could just zoom in on the eastern side of the development, just so it's a bit clearer. You can probably make out on the plan that in the eastern half of the development you can see a sort of lozenge of green plantation with a yellow loop road going around it. Can you just see that in the middle of the eastern section of the development? Effectively, that's the only road that links up to it within that part of the site. There is no vehicular route through that will link between the houses served off South Road, and you can just make the South Road connection out in brown, I believe. I think the cursor is on it now. And the only way that you can get through is via a pedestrian cycle link that joins the top of that yellow loop road that you can see going around the sort of section of landscaped area. So there is no physical road link between the entrance off South Road and the entrance off the roundabout, the new arm off the roundabout. But pedestrians and cyclists will be able to pass through the development. Hopefully that's clarified.
Could I just have a supplementary, Mr. Chairman? Surely that will cause so much frustration to the rest of the people, won't it?
That's not a planning issue, is it?
Well, it's a question.
Well, how can the officer tell how a person will feel?
No, Mr. Chairman, if you've spent quite some time drafting a plan, surely those questions come up. Because people are going to move into these other houses and expect the same kind of access and ability to live their lives as everybody else.
Through you, Chair, James Turner again. In relation to that point, obviously, I accept it's a resident that moves in will have to will understand what they're moving into. But clearly, the roads do not link, in terms of actual addressing and elements like that will give people the understanding of where they live or people's visitors' addresses, etc. The South Road element is completely separate from the road that comes in from the roundabout. In that regard, they'll be addressed differently. So it won't have the same road name or anything like that. And in that regard, there's an element of understanding in that respect of telling future residents or people trying to get to the site or visit people or deliver things that actually, in that regard, the two elements will be segregated by addressing. But I can't offer anything more than that as an answer, unfortunately.
I'm grateful, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Brossard.
Thank you very much, Chairman. James, two questions for you and then one question for Margaret. Looking at the section leading on to, for instance, South Road, what is the purpose of the white section in between the two brown sections? I presume it's not an underpass, it's not a bridge. It's just that it doesn't show brown all the way through. There's a gap.
Yes, I understand. There's a gap that you can see the case officer is pointed at present. It's just a patination in the road. It's a treatment to the road, indicatively shown as a sort of, either a raised table or a different treatment in terms of materials to try and give the road some sort of clarity where there are different intersections of the road joining. As I said, there's a cycle link coming through there. So it's an indicative patination of the road.
Thank you. Supplementary, if I can then, James. How will I understand the answer that you gave to Councillor Virgo with regard to cars, but what about cyclists and pedestrians? Will they be able to access South Road? Is there going to be a pedestrian link, shall we say, between the two developments?
Yes, there is. Clearly that is the connection between the two. Off that link road, there is a pedestrian, sorry, not off the link road, off the loop road that's in the middle there, if I get Margaret to zoom in a little bit more again. To that area you referred to earlier with the discolour, whether it's white, not brown, there is a link that comes through there that cyclists and pedestrians will be able to use. And there's also a pedestrian footpath in the corner that comes out to one of the sort of most southern eastern road that serves the houses fronting South Road. So there is pedestrians and cyclists will be able to walk through that bit to link between South Road and the main bulk of the development that's served via 9 Mile Ride.
Thank you for that, James. Margaret, just one quick question, and that's to do with the parking provision. My understanding is that the criteria, the measurement of number of parking spaces for the 3 and 4 bedroom properties on affordable housing, those meet the criteria. The only adjustment is with the 2 bedroomed properties where there's a 1.5 ratio per property on the affordable housing. That's the only element in which there's a shortfall. Is that correct?
That's correct. The shortfall is on the apartment blocks in this eastern sections, the 2 there and the 4 there, where the parking is in particular parking courts identified for those. The affordable housing units do meet the parking standards, as all the other houses on the site do.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes.
Yes, sir. Let's go to the word waste and recycling. As I'm sure you would be prepared, this is why I'm looking at it. I've heard the words, and this is where I will ask highways, and then we will come to design. Insufficient parking, and then ample parking. And then we heard just then with the flats. I can find nothing in here which gives me any feeling. Where will we be having the design element for the bins? And believe me, if you haven't sufficient parking, the bin problem of my trucks and that, I can take you all around the borough and show you.
Okay, what's your question,
Can I ask where in here the design element for even the flats, let alone the houses, have been incorporated, the vehicles, the trucks, can manipulate and move around these areas?
Through you, Chair, I'll try and answer some of that. I think it may relate to answers that you might require from the case officer in design, but the main roads through and the routes certainly within the main part of the site leading from 9 Mile Ride, and the roads have sufficient width and turning heads where the roads are long enough, turning heads to allow trucks to turn around. There's the turning head even at the end of the main route through. The loop road itself, the loop road I referred to earlier, that is that yellow road that basically passes round a new area of landscaping, is sufficient in scale to allow a large refuse to come up and turn around and head back down. Within the eastern and the northern eastern part served as South Road, again there are turning heads for vehicles to turn around there. And in relation to around the flats, and I think the question you asked for the flats, In one location, the refuse vehicle can use the main road and reverse up, and where the other set of flats are that are served off the internal road from 9 Mile Ride, there is a bin collection point within 25 metres of the road to be adopted, and so the refuse vehicle will not need to enter. They can collect from the main road from the bin collection point. But I'll let the case officer answer a bit more about design.
All I could add really is that obviously the houses will be provided with rear access and bin collection will be as expected. Within the apartments, each block contains only 4 apartments, and bin storage facilities are available, and as James has pointed out, bin collection points are provided close to those within the parking areas, so that bins can be emptied safely and conveniently for residents and for staff. Thank you.
Can I have a supplementary, sir?
Yeah, sure.
On the design, were the officers in the team for the waste and collection shown these designs for the flats and things?
Yes, they have seen these plans, yes.
They have, okay.
Councillor Ballyboe.
Hello? Oh, that's better. Thank you. There you go. I wasn't sure who to ask the question, this particular question. The speaker for the applicant said the parking standard was not met on some of the 2-bedroom flats, and also went on to say that was considered appropriate. By who? It is, yeah.
Thank you. Oh. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the parking standard for the apartments is 1.5 spaces per 2 units. Our parking standards do allow for flexibility of approach if evidence is submitted that that's appropriate. And the evidence here is that that standard has been used on other 2-bedroom affordable apartment schemes. It doesn't meet the full standard, but with other measures such as not allocating to allow for more flexibility of use, it was considered to be appropriate in the apartments because the parking is contained within parking courts. And it's considered that that would not cause any issues of highway safety or harm. I don't know if James wishes to add anything.
Through Chair, the only thing I can add is that the Highway Authority has raised a concern on that because the evidence that in relation to demonstrating the sufficient parking level hasn't been provided with this application to that date, or significant evidence or relevant evidence to the situation. I understand the position that's taken by the applicant and the fact that it's affordable housing and that can be relevant to it. But in terms of the situation in relation to up-to-date evidence, which you would have considered on other applications as well as ourselves, that's the Highway Authority's position, but appreciate there's a balance and there is flexibility within the standards.
Thank you. You another question, Councillor?
I have a lot, Chair, so you have to bear with me. Sorry, just for clarification, are we saying in this case people living in affordable housing have less cars or need less parking?
I think our parking standards do acknowledge that flexibility can sometimes be appropriate on these units, and we have had some experience of other schemes in the borough, and some evidence was put forward to justify the parking standard to be used on the affordable scheme. And as I said, other measures such as not allocating all the spaces does allow for turnover and more free allocation of parking by the housing provider.
Thank you. Can I just ask for clarification? Is our current site allocation plan still valid?
Max Baker, Assistant Director Planning. Yes, that is currently part of the development plan, though some of the policies in it will be superseded, but not all of them, by the emerging local plan.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm just trying to get clarification. So currently, planning decisions, the site allocation plan that we currently have now is what we're working to, pretty much in terms of sites.
The site allocations plan allocates sites to meet needs for a certain period. As you're aware, we also have an emerging local plan that takes planning forward, but we have to consider each application on its merits because the site isn't allocated within the site allocations local plan. That doesn't mean that we can't approve development on it.
Thank you. Okay. Can you just, can somebody just explain to me, because I've tried to find the information and I wasn't not able to do that. What is this Beaufort Park proposed local wildlife site? Because I'm assuming this site is included in that. What is the purpose of this wildlife site?
My understanding is that in the past work has been done to look at proposed allocations of this site as a wildlife site, but my understanding is that that has not progressed, and our biodiversity officer, who's been consulted on this application, supports the application subject to measures in section 106 and conditions, acknowledging the biodiversity on the site, but also that in particular sites, areas that have been safeguarded, such as the area around the Sang, which will be a safeguarded area so that development is excluded from there. And the emerging local plan also speaks of area where development should be restricted, such as the woodland to the west. So the biodiversity aspects have been taken account of in the emerging local plan and in this application.
Do you have another question?
Yeah, I just wanted, you mentioned in your submission, this is to the case officer, the number of trees that will be planted. I think it was 600 and something. How many trees are currently on the site?
I don't think we have a number on site in the sense of is it a plantation woodland, so I think I referred to the extent of woodland that will be
Scots pine, isn't it?
Scots line that would be lost in hectares, but not in terms of numbers, because most of the trees on site are identified as group trees rather than trees of individual merit or characteristics. So we talk about the loss of the which I think I referred to in a presentation and I now unfortunately can't find. So there hasn't been a counting of individual trees. As you've seen from the photos, the number of coniferous areas of coniferous woodland really make that impossible to do, I'm afraid.
Sorry, 637 new trees.
I just wanted to know how many would die for that. How many trees are going to be cut down?
It's currently Scots pine, which is it's farm trees, isn't it? They're grown as agricultural trees.
It's just the numbers, Chair. It matters, I think.
That would have been useful to have that question earlier, so the officer could have got that for you.
You mean gone out to count the trees?
No, but they could have made an estimate.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
Thank you. Can I ask, first of all, a question regarding a 5-year land supply, which was mentioned earlier, and that the council does not have a 5-year land supply.
That's correct.
We were supposed, I believe, to publish in March, April this year, our revised 5-year land supply, but it was delayed till July, I believe. Can I ask if that work has been done and what the result of that work was in terms of our current recalculated 5-year land supply is? I have other questions as well. So.
Thank you, Chair. Max Baker, Assistant Director Planning. The work on that is currently in progress. We never publish before July in any year. It's never published in March, April, because there is a lot of work that has to be done in order to arrive at the position which is taken as of the end of March in the relevant year. So that work is still underway.
So the supplementary on that, so when will we know?
We should know within the next few weeks, I would suggest.
Okay, I'll move on. Section the NPPF, section 8, paragraphs 92 to 103, deals with health. The NPPF now recognise the link between housing and health, and refers to the sustainability. Where in the report or where in the consideration can I understand how and where the health implications of this development has been considered?
Okay, so is that in terms of the local health infrastructure and facilities, or?
No, this is in terms of the NPPF now states that the healthy communities and the sustainability of a site can contribute or otherwise towards people's health and well-being, and that sustainability of a site is an important factor in maintaining good health outcomes and health and well-being. Oddly enough, with the understanding of reducing the impact on the health infrastructure.
Max Baker, Assistant Director Planning. I mean, you're obviously aware that our standard committee report format doesn't include specific section on health. I mean, that's for members to take if they wish to do that, but in terms of how the report overall addresses health, obviously a key factor in health outcomes is the provision of high quality housing. So that is certainly covered within it. Similarly, the provision of open space. Again, this is providing for the first time publicly accessible open space of several hectares. Promotion of sustainable travel. Again, we've heard how this will provide pedestrian and cycle links through to existing and new facilities within the area. So there are a whole range of aspects within which the report does cover things that are relevant to health outcomes, I would suggest.
Councillor online, Peter Hayden.
Thank you, Chair. Peter Hayden speaking. I wanted to ask about the gap provision. There's a couple of questions on that. How formal is it that there is a need for a gap?
I think it's acknowledged and including in the emerging local plan that maintenance of the gap is necessary, and that could be done through the development of this site by the retaining of the woodland buffers, the sang and the woodland to the west. So in the terms of strategic gap doesn't prevent development, it's just that the features that that prevent the coalescence are retained. So this development is in line with the provision in the emerging local plan policies, but by keeping a large landscape buffer along 9 Mile Ride, keeping buffer on South Road, the sang and the safeguarded area and the woodland to the west, that maintains the function of it falling within a strategic gap between Wokingham, Crowthorne and Bracknell.
If I can just add to that response as well, members will probably be aware from their extraordinary meeting at which they voted through the emerging local plan that emerging plan will be the first plan that actually formally designates the extent of the strategic gap, which was previously defined by effectively a zigzag line within the core strategy. So this is the first time that members have actually approved the exact extent of the strategic gap was in approving that emerging local plan.
Thank you, Chair. Can I follow up?
Certainly.
So are there any minimum requirements for something to constitute a gap? It's just that it's very subjective, but looking at it, it looks as though it's narrowed considerably. And is it, it's again subjective to the point where it's not really a gap at all. It's just a strip of woodland.
There's no defined minimum. The evidence for the local plan was very much based, it is there on record for people to see as to what informed the extent of the gap designation.
Thanks, Max. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Balibo.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just clarify one statement that Max just made now? Now, the emerging local plan, the council approved it to go to consultation, not, am I right?
The council approved it to go to examination.
Exactly.
And which involves a further consultation as well.
Thank you. So it wasn't a clear approval that we are adopting it. We haven't adopted it yet.
It is a statement of the council's intention for the plan. It is the council's plan, and that is what we wanted to be adopted, which is why we put it to examination.
I know, but clarification, we have not adopted it yet.
Yeah, okay, you've been pedantic. We understand.
No, I just wanted to say yes or no.
Yeah, it's not adopted until after the examination.
Thank you. So the answer is no. That's all.
Councillor Mackenzie-Ball.
No, I haven't finished, Chair, sorry.
Right.
In our current local plan, this area, what is it designated as? Is it brownfield? Is it countryside? Is it green space? Is it woodland? What is it?
The site is currently outside the settlement, so it's a countryside area.
So it's countryside. And can I just understand, in order to build on countryside, we have, it's got to have a special, what is it called? Special reason or something like that. Mitigation or, yeah. Yes or no?
The current position is, on the 5-year land supply, that permission should be granted unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits.
So that's the old balancing.
That's correct.
Yeah.
The tilted balance.
Tilted balance, yes.
Sorry, can I? Okay. This tilted balancing thing always confuses me. I just want clarification here. If, for example, I don't know how to ask this, but I'm just going to say it anyway and see
I'll tell you what, shall I come to Councillor Mackenzie-Ball? You form the question, I'll come back to you. Okay, Councillor Mackenzie-Ball.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to go back just a minute, Max. At the extent of the gap, what is that in yards, feet, miles, kilometres? Could you remind us?
So I don't have those figures to hand, sorry.
Say again.
I don't have those figures to hand.
You don't? Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask another one, please, very quickly? I meant to ask the developer about the eco documents that they've put together, BATs, and we have BATs here on the report. My question is, sir, are we also not only providing high quality housing for the possible purchasers, are we providing the high quality roosting for the bats, and are we maintaining the maternity roosts as well? Do we know?
Answer that, Chairman, as the developer's not online still. A condition has been included for an ecological survey to be submitted. One did come in with the application, but obviously we do expect these to be updated, and that will include measures that we think are appropriate and necessary, and that will be in conjunction with our biodiversity officers. So bat roosts and the like are a fairly standard means of protection and enhancement on a site.
I'll come back to you, Councillor Balibo.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I've tried. I'll try. Just because we don't have a 5-year land supply, does this mean you can build pretty much anywhere in the borough?
I could answer that, Chairman. I think, as I mentioned earlier, that means that permission is granted unless adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. It doesn't mean, because we don't have a 5-year land supply, that anywhere can be developed, but that tilted balance has to be carried out. And I think in my report I do run through the landscape matters and the positive benefits of the development. So we're not saying any countryside site can be developed, but on this particular development we've carried out the tilted balance and recommended approval.
If you look at page 19, 9.4, it answers that question, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Last for now, can the officer just tell us how far is the nearest shop or shopping facility without driving to the first and last houses?
Why couldn't you have asked that question to the officer before? It would have given her a chance to answer it. Well, didn't you read the report?
No, I did. What I'm saying, Chair, we went to a presentation by the applicant, and I think there was something mentioned or something like that.
Impossible to answer that question, I'm afraid. Okay, any other questions? Okay. No more online. Good. So I'll move the officer's recommendation, which is on page 44,
Supplementary pages 1 to
and amended by the supplementary report on pages 1 to 4. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Brossard. Members, we've had a lot of questions about this, and I'm sure there'll be some debate. Let's just clear up one thing. The local plan is quite rightly, it's the emerging local plan. It has not yet been through the examination, or the examination is ongoing. However, some weight can be given to the fact that it is in the local plan as an area for housing. Even with that said, and if you ignore the local plan that's emerging, what we then have to do is fall back on the fact that we don't have a 5-year land supply and that we have to then apply the tilted balance. The 5-year, the trees that are being lost are predominantly Scots pine trees, which are farm trees in quite a lot of the area, and are being replaced by quite a number. Was it, I said 537, 637 deciduous trees, which are more ecologically sound than the pine trees. They have a defined life. Parking was another issue that was raised, and the parking, as we've said before, our parking standards are there for highway safety, and the officers have shown that's what they're there for, and the officers have shown that this can be achieved with the current parking provision. Does the seconder wish to speak?
Yes, I will. Thank you very much, Chairman. It's very clear from the time that we spent discussing this application that a lot of questions that have arisen and a lot of answers have been provided. I am seconding the recommendation. I'm influenced, I have to say, on the emphasis that has been provided on the affordable housing provision, the 50%. The fact also that unusually when we've looked at affordable housing, there's a bias towards the 3 and 4 bedroom properties, and these are family properties. That the numbers were given, I think, of those on the waiting list. So I think that is a material consideration. There is, yes, a shortfall in the parking for the 2-bedroom properties that are affordable. I think the actual number was a shortfall of 12 parking spaces. But overall, I believe it is an appropriate plan, an appropriate proposal. And for that reason, Chairman, I will be voting in favour of it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Turrell.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the committee for their questions, because this is an application of significance to the borough. It's an application that looks forward to the future in more ways than one. Reference has been made to the proportion of affordable housing, and we know that there is considerable housing need in the borough, and that it is a responsibility we have to address that. It's that's to be welcomed. I think also by doing it in a planned way, we can ensure the quality of the housing and make sure it comes forward in a sensible way. because of the proximity of the site to the Thames Basin Heaths SPA, the SANG provision is generous. Now that's important for a number of reasons. Firstly, it greatly improves the look of the site. It improves the opportunities for biodiversity, and the level of protection with SANG land is considerably higher than looking at that of a strategic gap. Now, gaps are important. They were an important feature of the local plan consultation. So it's important that we give support there to providing this sense of space, this sense of separation. I think we've seen how well that has worked at Bucklers Park, and the quality of the SANG land that has come forward there. The fact that the council does not have a 5-year land supply has been touched on. It is a significant point. The supply is calculated to the 31st of March each year. That's the cut-off date for the calculation. Because of the significance of the calculation, it does take some time, and that is why that's why the figures are known somewhat later than that actual cut-off date. Looking forward again in terms of transport, the provision of e-spaces is to be welcomed. There's the extent of provision, and actually implementing this new these new building regulations requirements on that, because we are seeing the rapid and increasing uptake of electric cars, and it is important to be addressing that, and it is good to see a development that's doing that. In terms of the also in terms of transport, the link to South Road is important. Now, South Road is a key part in reaching up the route reaching up to East Hampstead Park School. In terms of sustainable transport, work is being done to improve that, and because of the increased uptake in walking and cycling. The borough's eco reward scheme, which has been so popular and so well taken up, and so much in demand by other bodies within the borough outside the Brackland area, it will be an important factor there. People are increasingly making the choice to walk or cycle. That won't solve every transport need, and other forms of transport remain important, but it is a significant, we have seen in recent years, a significant increase in that form of transport, with, I might add, its obvious links to people's health. If they're walking and cycling more, that's the more active travel. So that's worth, that's a considerable point. In terms of the woodland that's lost, the reference has been made to plantation woodland. It's a crop. It would be coming down anyway. That's how managed woodland works. But I think the planting is an important part of this, and in terms of taking it forward, I think it improves the overall look of it. And I think that so I think that in the round what we have is, as I said at the start, an application that looks to the future. It addresses important needs. And in that respect, it's a sensible option. And I think that we as a council do have a good track record on addressing those issues. And I think that the increasing weight that can be given to our emerging local plan, which is now in the latter stages of its journey towards adoption, is an important factor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turrell. Councillor Virgo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are many points I'd like to actually just go through with Councillor Turrell, actually. The fact is, when we look at a plan, ladies and gentlemen, we look at it with our present policies. We cannot gamble on the fact that the local plan, which is before presentation, before the inspectors, will be passed. So I would address this to the members that we can only consider this on our present policies. Now, Mr. Chairman, going through this, there are many, and it makes me rather angry and excited, because people of affordable houses should have no different facility to those with more money. We're in a country here where we want everyone to have the same access. So I would suggest to you there are many things wrong at the moment with this present application. Of course we need affordable houses. Of course we need more houses. But please don't downgrade people's lives just because they're affordable. Let me give you an example. I mean, you know, we're going into, as Councillor Turrell said, climate change, which we know is now becoming a real problem. So let's see an estate with solar cells on it. Let's see something really kind of out there. But no, just accept it because, you know, the figures don't work, Mr. Chairman. And I would suggest also, regarding the officer's points about, well, if we put more trees in, you know, this is a problem because, you know, there isn't the space. And well, I would suggest less houses on this site would provide a better outcome. Maybe that should have been considered, Mr. Chairman. I also would bring your attention, frankly, to some of the designs. I just don't think they're very attractive. And again, I don't want a place here in Bracknell Forest that is full of things that I don't think are attractive. So, you know, there are many points that I would go through this where I think this application needs more help, more consideration, less density, and more eco-friendly stuff, Mr. Chairman. As you can probably see from my voice and my excitement, I can't support this, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
Well, I'll try not to get too excited, Chairman, but I will not be supporting this application on the current plan rules. It speaks about we do have under the MPF the option to refuse if we believe that the application does not provide sufficient benefit to the community. And I absolutely cannot believe this application can be seen as providing any significant benefit. First of all, in terms of sustainability, it is an isolated community. We are going to create an island of people, and that is not good. That's not good for their health. There was a comment made earlier when Councillor Virgo asked about what will people feel? Sorry, folks, but nowadays what people feel about their environment is a material consideration as we look to see the adverse effect of some of the things and some of the creations that are being built in the name of development. I can find nothing of any innovative nature in the development. I am quite perturbed by the fact that technically at the moment only 25% of the site is secured or can be secured under a section 106, and then we may, if we get this permission, then have a shot at getting the other 25% as a grant from Homes England. Not, for me, the level of security that I would want to hear if you're going to tell me. Now, the other part of that worries me is, are we actually creating to pick up on Councillor Virgo's passionate comments there about where people will live in the future and not wishing to stigmatise a particular area. But if we go and put a site where half of it is affordable housing at a density commensurate with other areas in our borough that are recognised as areas of deprivation, I have grave concern. Fewer houses, if you're going to develop this important gap site, and this important piece of countryside land again, then design is critical. And we have seen the emergence, in my view, of poor design. And if you look at some of the design things in the planning press and in the developer press and housing press, Juliet balconies are actually, especially at first floor or above, a major intrusion on people's privacy and so forth, and causes a health impact. Thank you, Chairman. I will get to my points, but I cannot. I'd like to be able to say, but on the other hand, there is this positive and that positive. So I cannot find in this a positive that would support. And I am absolutely convinced that if this were to go to appeal, and I've recently sat at an appeal and challenged the 5-year land supply issues and the gap issues, that we could sustain a refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you. I'll do this very quickly because you've heard a lot of what's already been said that I've got here. Infrastructure. It's the impact on local infrastructure and highways, which is contrary to Save Policy M9 of BFLP, CS23 of CSDPD. Number of transport trips that were needed because there are no amenities whatsoever on this site, therefore has to be contrary to sustainable locational principles. This is not the case. In this application, there is nothing on this site that will secure anybody to go to the local shops. So that's contrary to Save Policy E20, EN25 of BFLP relating to residential amenities. The developers say that the dwellings will be accessed by the TRL roundabout. These statements really are not enforceable because its impact on the local infrastructure and highways, that's contrary to Save Policy M9 of the BFLP, CS23 of CSDPD. So that's very, very quickly to reinforce the road impact. Whatever the developers say, traffic is like water. It will take the easiest route. And if Matilda is sitting in the back and wants a wee, they're not going to go all the way around. They've got to go to the shortest route. So let's think about that and think about the whole scenario of highways and impact on the infrastructure, because we've also got across the road the Wokingham SDLP. I mean, that's going to be massive. So, of course, we've got to think about that. And then, of course, we've got strategic gap. Contrary to Save Policy EN8 of BLP, CS9, CSDPD. I bet everybody's bored with these policies, but what I'm trying to show you here, Chairman and members, that we have policies, and these policies are not being adhered to. It won't be worth a hill of beans if we don't actually adhere to what we say. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's going to impact what we are trying to do on climate change as well. We won't be able to hit our targets if we are going to be coalesced with the Wokingham SDLP, and then we have that, and then we have this other bunch of cars. So it can't support our climate change initiatives, and specifically this application does not contribute to BFC climate change initiative and the promise to the residents that carbon emissions will be reduced. No. More vehicle movements will only increase emissions and air pollution. So, sir, my recommendation would have been to refuse this. And sir, I cannot support this at all.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Balibo.
Thank you, Chair. Just to start with the whole parking issue. I disagree with the Chair that our parking standard is solely about road safety. The MPPF does state in paragraph 108 specifically, yes, town centre, because I think that's the only reference to parking standards. and it does say that to seek improve the quality of parking, it is convenient, safe, and secure. Convenient is very important. We have parking standards for a reason, and two-bedroom house likely more than ever to have two cars. In Grey Hollands, for example, and I'm sure all around Bracknell, we know that one of the biggest issues for our residents is parking. People will not get out of their cars. Once these buildings or the developments are built, councillors will have to then listen to all the complaints regarding parking. We can avoid that. This is a blank canvas. Okay, so we have to stick to our policies on this, especially when it's something brand new. There's a lot of talk about the local plan, and I have to say that I really believe in the way Bracknell works and the amount of energy and effort that we put into developing a local plan. We take that and we present it to our public, and they buy into that. Now, we have already a site allocation plan. We're going through a new one at the moment. And there's a lot of reference about, well, this is already included in the new one and things like that. But I have to bring members back, even to the new policy, LP5, about this particular site. There's a lot of things that are actually missing that are not going to be delivered in this planning application. Now, if this planning application came forward after the plan had been approved or adopted by the council, they will have to provide 5% dwelling on service plot for self-built. But that is not currently being provided. Right? So on one hand, you're telling us and asking us to look at the emerging plans. But there's a reason and there's a trade-off when we include a site in a plan. There's always a trade-off. And the public buy into that and say, well, okay, I can live with that, because they're providing this, and that. What we cannot do is cheat the public from that. And say, well, the site is already included, but guess what? They're not delivering everything, a lot of the stuff that are there. Yeah. So we have also on one of the emerging plans for this site is the provision of green infrastructure. I don't know what that actually means, but I'm assuming it's got to be something to do with the environment. It's not just planting trees. I don't see that in this plan. Okay, so there are many reasons why I would not support this application, but I do have a blue shade, and I will urge members to not support the officer's recommendation at this point in time for this development. Thank you.
So you're giving us notice of an alternative motion should this one fall, is that correct?
Indeed. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mrs Hayes.
Thank you, sir. I can only say that I find that my fellow councillors have spoken eloquently and placed before you reasons why, with myself, I won't reiterate. But design is critical, particularly when I heard the words about, oh, the flats have storage space. I'd like to take some people to see the problems I am at this point in time undertaking to try and get waste and recycling, which is a very, our residents really support, and this has an adverse impact on collection, design and everything. I have not been shown something on here that would say to me that the collection would be easy and all the rest and comply. And I will be taking it up with my own waste officers about future plans. I have concerns, and I would really consider that this is not an appropriate one in front of me for what I undertake. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak? Nobody online? No. Okay. Okay. Quite a lot to sum up there, but I'll try and keep it very brief because lots have been said about this. The fact that we've got before us that it may be 50% social housing, but obviously that is dependent on grants. Even if it's not, 25% of affordable housing is still policy compliant. So that's one point. I do agree with the point about this being an island community, and that's something that we need to take into consideration, especially when there are no facilities being provided on this development. However, the point being made about traffic finding the route of least resistance, there is no traffic link between the north part of the site and the south part of the site. So if you live in a certain part of this site, you have to use that exit. And if you live in the north, you have to use the other exit. There is no choice. You cannot move between the two with a vehicle. You can by walking, you can by cycle, but not with a vehicle. And with regards to the waste, I take your point, Councillor Mrs Hayes, but the waste officer was consulted and raised no objection on this. However, without wishing to repeat everything that's been said on this, I'm now going to put it to the vote. Thank you. All those in favour to approve this application, please show. And those against? The motion falls. Councillor Balibo, you gave notice of alternative motion. Would you like to... have you got that printed? Or is it available on the screen, please? Okay, is there any way of making it that we can... So, okay, Councillor Balibo, I don't want you to read the whole thing, but do you want to propose your alternative motion?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to propose this alternative motion and give members enough time to read if they want to. Thank you.
Seconded. Seconded. Okay. Do you want to talk to it?
Not really. I think, you know, everybody has said what needs to be said. Sorry, yeah, I do just want to say thank you to the officers, actually, for helping out with this.
Does seconder wish to speak? Reserve. Any other member wish to speak? No other member wishes to speak. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Birch? No. All those in favour of the alternative motion to refuse, please show. And those against? The motion is carried. That is refused. If anybody's just here for this, you're more than welcome to leave. But you can stay for the rest of the fun as well if you want to. Yeah. Councillor Balibo has to leave the meeting now. So thank you, Councillor Balibo. And Councillor Bandari is leaving online. Okay. Right, we move on then quickly to the next item on the agenda, which I've got to find.
Number 6. It's here.
Yeah, I need to find my... oh, here it is.
Swift.
Thank you. Bracknell Beaches, page 57 on your agenda item. Once again, we have public speakers on this, but we'll hear the officer's recommendation. Sorry, the officer's report first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. The development site lies within part of the larger... Sorry, can I just check that everyone can see the plan and you can hear me okay?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Simon.
You never know. I could be talking for ages. The development site lies within part of the larger site allocations local plan allocated site for residential development, and this is policy SA1. It is also located within 5 kilometres of the Thames Basin Heath SPA. The 1.75 hectare site currently contains 7 two-storey office blocks that provide 13 self-contained B1 office units, surrounded by 304 car parking spaces. The site has a single southern point of access, vehicle access onto Downshire Way, the A322, via Old Bracknell Lane West. That's here. The site is currently linked to the station and town centre via a footbridge located to the northeast of the site, here. The bridge currently provides temporary able-bodied pedestrian access over the Reading to London Waterloo Railway line at the agreement of Network Rail. Southeast of the site is the residential area known as Faircross. It's here. And southwest of the development site is the council depot, which also forms part of the SA1 South residential allocation, and that's here. This plan here shows the 3 sites outlined in red that make up the policy SA1 allocation, known as Land at Old Bracknell Lane West. It was originally envisaged that 318 units could be delivered on the allocation site as a whole, including the depot site. Currently, 65 apartments have been delivered on the former Photon House, Blueprint House sites, which are here. The majority of the depot site would no longer provide housing, given recent consent to upgrade the current depot site buildings to better suit the needs of today. 318 units for the allocated site is not a fixed number, and therefore, if it were to be demonstrated that a higher density worked, this should not be viewed upon negatively. The council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing, and as such, this is a material consideration. Planning permission is sought for the erection of 7 vacant office demolition of 7 vacant office buildings and the erection of 7 mixed-use buildings containing 349 apartments, alongside 294 square metres of flexible community retail floor space, use class E and F. Alongside this, there would be associated surface basement parking, landscaping, a proposed public realm, that's over in this area here, and access to the southern platform at Bracknell Railway Station and beyond to the town centre, that's here. The proposed 7 buildings range from 4 to 16 stories in height. The proposed residential mix will consist of 159 one-bed apartments and 192 bed apartments. Of the 349 apartments, 43, that's 12%, are to be affordable shared ownership units. The applicant submitted a financial viability report concluding it would not be possible, due to viability reasons, for any further affordable units to be provided on site. This report was independently assessed, whereby BPS Chartered Surveyors stated that they agree with the findings in that no further affordable housing could be provided on site, as the scheme would not be viable. However, this could be reviewed at a later date via a Section 106 obligation. The proposed development seeks to deliver 294 square metres of flexible community retail space, use classes E and F, providing ground floor activation to the public open spaces around the buildings C, D and E. That's around here. This floor space is intended to be flexible, with the priority being to animate the public realm for placemaking purposes, as well as providing activation for the site at weekends. Other areas of ground floor accommodation will be taken up as ancillary residential floor space for the residents to enjoy. This could consist of on-site workspace, co-working facilities, exclusive to residents, or a gym, again, exclusive to residents. A total of 401 parking spaces will be provided, comprising 349 resident parking spaces, that's 1 per flat, 38 visitor spaces, 4 car club spaces, and 10 spaces for the retail community use. 672 secure cycle spaces will be provided on site, alongside 80 EV charging points that will actually have the charging points available and the ability to provide a further 80 EV charging points should the needs arise. So the facilities will be in the ground. And there'll also be a shuttle bus to the town centre. Both the residential element and the proposed mixed uses are considered acceptable in principle, given the site's SALP policy SA1 designation and the acceptance of a sequential test carried out by the applicant. Adequate and accessible on-site bin storage will be provided in.
We've lost you there. You've gone on mute, Simon.
Sorry about that. I might have just knocked it. Where did I get to? Sorry.
You got up to, you started to say about adequate bin storage and then it went off.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yes, this development provides adequate and accessible on-site bin storage and a service management plan, which will be considered later at via a condition, and it will adequately serve the residential apartments alongside the mixed uses. Right, I'm just moving on to some elevations. As you can see, the first set of elevations are of blocks A, B, and C from the west, representing the front of the building as seen from the main access road. That's this set here. The second two sets of elevations are
Can you
also
make
of
that any bigger for us, please?
Of course I can,
Simon,
no
thank
problem.
You.
There you go. Is that better?
Great, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so this is the first set of elevations of blocks A, B, and C from the west, representing the front of the buildings as seen from the main access road. The second two sets of elevations, I might be able to just get them both on at the same time. There you go. This are of blocks A, B, and C from the east along the boundary with Faircross. And the third elevation is of block D, the 16-story block as viewed from the south. And the fourth two sets of elevations, again, these are elevations that continue on, are of blocks D, E, F, and G from the north as viewed from the railway line. Just going to move on to some interesting artist impressions that we've got here. So the first image shows an artist impression of what the approach might look like from the main access road, past blocks A, B, and C, looking towards the northern blocks, including that of the 16-story block D and block E. The second image shows an artist's impression when standing on the new southern platform access of what the public open space, the end of block C, and the main access road south of the site may look like. The third image shows an artist's impression of what the public realm and landscaping may look like. And the fourth and final image shows an artist's impression of what the northern boundary of the site may look like when approaching Brackland Station by train. Members are directed to page 4 of the supplementary report for updates relating to this item, which include reference to amended paragraph 9.16 referring to the submission and acceptance of a sequential test, reference to amended paragraph 9.75 referring to the lead local flood authority confirming they are satisfied with the principle of the drainage scheme subject to suitably worded conditions, and reference to amended paragraph 9.89 referring to the applicant's intention to deliver 43 affordable shared ownership units, that's 12%. This unfortunately on my part was omitted from the report. And also reference to an amended recommendation, including amended conditions, consolidated conditions, and additional conditions. Now going to show some photos of the site. So the first photo is Old Bracknell Lane West, looking west. So this is the depot site here, and this is the Photon House and Blueprint House site in the distance. I think this is the rear access to the ambulance station. Access south towards Downshire Way and the A322, where you can see the traffic lights at the end of the road. So this would be the main access out of the site and into the site. You've got a photo here of the pedestrian access to Old Bracknell Lane East, and you can just see the start of the Bracknell Beaches site here. And this is quite a useful photo that shows the depot building here, access to Bracknell Beaches, and then you can see development taking place over the railway line north to the north of the site. And then you've got, I think that's called One Station Road, I think, Ocean House, and you've got Station House there. This is from the internal access road looking south towards Old Bracknell Lane West. And this is the depot site on the right. This is a view from the main access road north, and you can just make out the buildings on the other side of the railway line. And I've just gone a bit closer to show you that once you're in there, you can see the railway station car park, you can see the office building there, and you can see Station House here. This is a little bit further west within a development site, and there's a sort of punch through where you can see the development that's taking place at the moment. And also then you've got the railway station car park here at the moment and the railway line running down the back of the site. This is a photo of, this is the main access road out to the A322, and this is the corner of the depot site. And we're just sort of turning around as we walk around the site. That's that corner I just showed you a minute ago. And now we're looking at a view east of Faircross, the residential area, over the internal access road. You've got the back of one of the main depot buildings that abuts the site, and the car parking that's there at the moment. A similar view, but looking the other way, back towards the middle of the site. The depot building here. This is the boundary of the depot currently down the end of the car park, where you can see here Photon House and Blueprint House. Sorry, I'm referring to the old buildings. Yeah, that's the development there that's under the allocation. You've got a boundary here with the trees and the railway line. And you've got here, this is the existing red footbridge that links the site to Bracknell Railway Station and the town centre. That will remain in place at the moment. I believe it provides permissive rights over the railway line as it stands. This is as you come off that railway bridge into this site, the development site. You can see Station House on the other side of the railway line here, and obviously the buildings that start off here. And I'm just panning round. This is a view southeast towards Faircross. So Faircross is in here. And these are the existing office buildings and the hard standing. This is a close-up view of that boundary with Faircross and the properties over here. You can see the level differences as well, quite clearly from that plan. And this is a bit further along, further south. This is the boundary again with Faircross, an eastern boundary. You can again see the level differences here. This is that same eastern boundary looking south. And this is the eastern boundary again here looking north. Oop, bear with me. My computer crashed a bit then. To conclude, the proposal as a whole is considered acceptable in principle given the SOUT policy SA1 designation and the submission of an accepted sequential test. The LPA are satisfied that the sequential test meets the national and local policy and that there are no suitable alternatives for this type of mixed-use development, given that it has been specifically designed to animate a new public open space and approach to the new Southern Railway platform access. The proposed development and its associated public open space, parking and landscaping responds well to the limitations of the site and is considered to make good use of land. It provides a legible access from the south into the site through a generously sized public square, north onto the platform with Bracknell Railway Station. It also allows for the east-west cycle and pedestrian connections with other policies SA1 developments, as well as the recently approved Coopers Hill development to the east. The proposed bulk, massing and overall architectural design of the buildings respects its surroundings, providing, where necessary, sympathetic transitional form and an external finish that takes note of materials used in the area, yet at the same time results in its own sense of place. The proposal has been designed, taking into account the Council's design SPD, so as not to result in any significant impacts upon amenity of both existing and future occupiers. The Highway Authority is of the view that the site's proximity to the town centre, along with the range of proposed measures to enhance and encourage sustainable travel, makes the proposed level of parking, which is a balance between Bracknell town centre and non-town centre standards, acceptable. The Highway Authority are also content that the site can be accessed and serviced in a safe manner and that the highway network can accommodate the level of traffic that would be generated. The proposal is also considered to appropriately address surface water drainage, biodiversity with its net gain of over 74%, Thames Basin Heath SPA mitigation, general infrastructure requirements and renewable energy policies subject to conditions and suitable obligations secured by way of a Section 106 legal agreement. In light of the above, it is recommended that the Assistant Director of Planning be authorised to approve the application subject to conditions and the completion of a Section 106 agreement to secure what is set out in both the main committee report and the associated supplementary report. Thank you all.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, once again, members, this application complies with our public speaking regulations. So just to bear with me, I understand we've got Mr. Ashley, is that right? Is it? Or have I got them mixed up again?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Ashley and Mr. Palmer. Yeah. Oh, Berg. Is it Mr. Berg? Sorry, sir. Okay. So first off is Mr. Holly. Yes. All right. Mr. Oh, sorry, Mr. Ashley. Mr. Ashley, did you hear me explain the rules around public speaking when I gave them before on the previous application?
Yes, I'm ready. I'm ready for my 20-second notice.
Okay. In that case, sir, your 3 minutes start now.
Okay. Figure 10 of section 9.37 of the full committee report shows mature green trees at the maximum height, which in turn discounts the top balcony in the apartment. Trees that will be planted backing onto Fairfield are too small and should be mandated to be larger. The trees are not evergreen, which means the majority of the time they will offer little way in the way of privacy to the residents of Faircross. Figure 9 of section 9.34 of the full committee report doesn't address the height of Block D. The 16-storey building is overwhelming for the area and out of character. It has no significant architectural or aesthetic value. The mock-up views originally provided were from locations that minimise the appearance of height. The only value being driven appears to be that for the developers in terms of maximising profitability. Regarding the station access to the south, that's section 9.44 of the committee report. It briefly mentions an agreement on design. I can't see documentation supporting an agreement with Network Rail at any level to build the access to the south side of the train station. I'd like to see that in agreement. I'd like to see an agreement in place before development begins. Section 11.1 bullet 7 appears to imply that approval is granted providing this access, which includes disability as well, disability access. The control and who can lease commercial units should be considered so that it enhances the area and supports local community. What would be detrimental is if it becomes another hub for takeaways and delivery enterprises. This would lead to increased moped traffic and noise, for example. My final concern is around the cooling of the apartments. We have recently experienced the hottest heat wave ever, and extreme weather events like this will continue and get worse. I'd like the committee to consider what further can be done to protect residents. I've read in the report that there is a mechanical ventilation. I assume that's a window that can be opened by hand. Other than that, I do believe that it is actually quite a good plan. I do support it, but I'd like to see these items addressed. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guest. I'm sorry, Mr.
Ashley, it's all right, no worries.
Leave me alone. It's all right. I'll get there. It's a shame when you get to my age. Members, do you have any questions for the public speaker before I get his name wrong again? Oh, you got away with it. Yep. Okay, thank you very much indeed. We move on then to Mr. Berg. At least I got your name right this time.
First time for everything.
Absolutely. Okay. You let me know when you're ready and I'll start the clock.
Is it on?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
can you
on,
hear me?
yeah,
Great.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah, ready.
your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you, Chairman, committee members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with what is still this morning. My name is Sam Berg. My company S2 are the applicants for this planning application for the redevelopment of Brackland Beaches, a site we have owned since 2019. The site was largely vacant during 2021, with the final tenants leaving in March of this year. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank officers led by Simon for their constructive engagement and advice for the past 3 years, working through a global pandemic, and their shared vision for how this site can deliver on the many benefits of bringing forward this allocated brownfield site. The scheme before you today has no objections from consultees. We have worked alongside Network Rail and South West Trains to enable the creation of a new southern access to Bracknell train station, which will benefit the future combined communities of this site of Coopers Hill and the wider adjacent neighbourhood. We have really listened to the wider local voice in shaping the proposals to respond to local views and concerns. We have made significant changes, including reductions in height of the southern buildings following the original submission, as well as introducing a landscape buffer to the boundary to address overlooking and privacy concerns. The scheme will bring forward 349 new homes in a variety of sizes alongside 43 affordable homes, making the most of the proximity to the town centre and encouraging sustainable transport methods, whilst recognising the needs of residents who will travel by car. EV charging provisions will be provided throughout the scheme, along with 672 cycle spaces, alongside a new strategic east-west cycle path to deliver on the Council's accessibility aspirations for this and the connected sites. A refuse and recycling strategy has been designed into the scheme from the outset, complemented by a managed collection system. We are keen to demonstrate environmental and social responsibilities by delivering a scheme with excellent green credentials and levels of sustainability. We will provide on-site renewable energy generation in the form of PVs on roofs, biodiversity benefits, and the majority of existing trees being retained, with over 80 new trees of various native species selected and planted to provide seasonal interest and excellent foraging, nesting and resting opportunities for birds, bats and insects. All of this will create a characterful and stimulating place to live and pass through for residents, workers and the wider neighbourhood. Your officers have acknowledged that we are creating a real sense of place with a new public square and a wider landscape-focused master plan that puts pedestrians and cyclists first. Over 17 acres of suitable alternative natural green space
20 seconds.
will be provided at Moss End Farm, which is the equivalent to nearly 10 football pitches, further contributing to the sustainable measures we are bringing forward. We are excited about this development, and with a positive decision today following officers' recommendation to approve, we can progress with a significant investment into the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. You got it within 1 second, so that's pretty good. Okay. Members, do you have any questions for the speaker? Councillor Virgo.
Mr. Berg, can I ask you just about the new platform and the train access? Is that something that is agreed with Network Rail? You've got an agreement with them, and is that a co-financing agreement, please?
So we have a technical team that have been working with us, and I've got a note from them which I'm going to read to you, which I think will help and answer your question. So we've developed a new entrance design in conjunction with South West Trains that is similar to the scheme recently delivered in Wokingham, the station in Wokingham. The new entrance enclosure would include automatic ticket gates, ticket vending machines and customer information systems. South West Railway have confirmed their support for the design principles as it matches those facilities provided for at other similar sites. The designs have been undertaken in full compliance with the design standards for accessibility railway stations and the Code of Practice by the Department of Transport. Most importantly, and to answer your question, we've signed up to a basic asset protection agreement with Network Rail, who've been consulted on this process. The Network Rail asset engineers have been further consulted regarding the existing assets that may be impacted by the new entrance, and high-level surveys have taken place in order to facilitate this new design.
I think the answer is yes.
Yes, it's a very good yes. I think that's fantastic, actually. But anyway, let's move on to... could I just ask you, does that mean that it's going to be similar to Wokingham? Is that as you see it? Because it's obviously Wokingham's very good. But
I think it'll follow the design principles, but obviously the shape, etc., might be slightly different.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Birch.
Thank you. I have an artist's impression in front of me on page 66 of the report. Could you confirm that each of the blocks are going to have grass roofs?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Hayes.
Well, I'm sure the young man realises what I'm going to ask a question on, sir. Waste and recycling, I'm pleased that I heard the words that, that this had been taken on. Was that with the design officers or the waste officers?
I believe with both, but I know that every core within all of the residential blocks will have their own designated waste and recycling points.
Are these underground, sir?
No.
In your design? They're not?
Probably might be worth asking the officer that one.
I was going to come to that then, thank you.
Any other questions for the speaker? Okay, Mr Berg, thank you very much indeed.
Thank
so
you.
Take your seat. We move on then to questions to officers, and I'm going to go first. This is for the highways officer. Could you give us an indication, please? And I have given notice of this question. Can you give us an indication, please, of the difference between the extant position with regards to vehicle movements on the current usage as it stands and the proposed usage? What would be the difference in traffic movements?
Thank you, Chair. The answer to your question is overall the application has been assessed using the Council's transport model, and that includes the reduction in trips as a result of the demolition of the extant office buildings and the introduction of the trips for the proposed residential and community strip retail unit. And that is based on a TRIX database-based trip generation and then using the Council's transport model. And the overall effect is actually a slight net decrease in trips from what is currently permitted on the site in terms of office development to become residential. That assessment was done based on 440 residential units in the Council's transport model. We now have an application in front of us that has 349, so there's actually a further reduction in trip generation compared with what was modelled. The difference will come in terms of times of day. Office developments typically generate a lot of inbound trips in the morning and a lot of outbound trips in the evening. Obviously, a residential site tends to have the opposite profile, so you'll have more outbound trips in the morning and more inbound trips in the evening. The net effect of that is a 1 to 2 second increase in delay at the Twin Bridges junction and a 0 to 1 second increase at the Horse and Groom roundabouts adjacent, which is negligible and imperceptible to other users of the road network. So overall, the effect is likely to be imperceptible and a reduction in trips compared with what is already permitted on the site.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got another question, this time for the officer. The speaker earlier mentioned about the link to Bracknell railway station and actually touched on whether or not there would also be disabled access. Would you be able to confirm that that's the case, please?
Yes, the actual design of the ramp up into the platform would be for disabled access, and then you've got the bridge that actually exists already within Bracknell railway station that has lifts, so anybody who couldn't use the steps could use the lifts to get across to the other side. And if that wasn't achievable, there is also this shuttle bus service to the town centre should that be required.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Mackenzie Ball.
Thank you, Chair. Simon, could
Hello.
you tell me, please, the height and the design of the buildings? Will any of the apartments be deprived of natural daylight?
No, a daylight study was carried out by the applicant, by a consultant, and as far as I can see, there would be no unacceptable loss of daylight experience within any of the flats, and this also includes any of the residential properties as a result of this development. I'm sorry, can I just also say my environmental health were consulted on this and haven't objected on those grounds at all.
Councillor Brossard.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So my question relates to parking. We're aware that, I believe you said in your report, there'll be one allocated parking space per flat, which equates to 349. Will there be a management plan to control it, or will the individual spaces be allocated per flat with a number, in other words, on the tarmac, on the road surface? What I'm wondering is, how will it be controlled to prevent people with more than one vehicle maybe using someone else's space?
Yes, I would love to answer that. I'm going to ask if Andy could, and I could step in. It's just that I think it's about a flexible approach really to managing the site. Is that okay, Andy?
Yeah, that's fine, Simon. Vice Chair, in answer to your question, the parking that's proposed is between the levels set out within the parking standards SPD for Bracknell Town Centre, which is adjacent to the site to the north, and locations outside of Bracknell Town Centre, which is table 6 and 8 within the parking standards SPD, which, as you mentioned, allocates 1 space per residential dwelling, in addition to 38 visitor spaces and 10 spaces for the proposed community stroke retail use on the site, and 4 car club spaces. With regards to allocation, there is a management plan set out by condition. Simon, hopefully you can give me the condition number in the report. And
I'll just have a look.
Here we are. It's condition number 10.
You got there before me.
So condition 10 is split into 2 parts, A and B. A sets out the numbers of spaces and also the electric vehicle charging requirements, and then section B of condition 10 talks about the requirements for a parking, servicing and deliveries management plan to be submitted and approved in writing before first occupation. So that document, the second part of condition 10B, would set out parking allocation, part I of section B of that condition. So at this current time, there is no indication of whether spaces would be specifically allocated at 1 space per unit, or whether they would be unallocated and usable by other units. For example, you may have 1 flat which has 2 cars and 1 flat which has no cars, for example. If the committee were minded to amend that condition to make it that no of the spaces shall be allocated, I'm sure that could be accommodated, Simon.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, thanks, Andy.
Another question, Councillor Brasser.
Well, yes, just really following on, Andy, from what you said. I'm going to say, if it's not control, but how will the management company actually control the parking provision if it's not done by means of a permit? And you yourself said that someone with 2 cars could use one of the unallocated spaces.
This is to be set out.
How would it be managed if it's not managed? If you see what I mean.
This is to be submitted, Vice Chair, via condition 10 part B, as part of the parking, servicing and deliveries management plan, which has to be submitted prior to first occupation.
Councillor Mrs Hayes.
Yes, sir, as you can appreciate, looking at the design, can you, or in the design element, where are they, the collection for the waste and recycling allocated?
I can zoom in on the ground floor plan. Bear with me. I don't know how readable that is for you. So you've got the bin storage areas are here, and you can access those out here by the road. And you've got bin storage units here, sorry, here and here and here. Again, there's a service strategy that goes around the back and also around here. I believe that, oh, I'm just trying to zoom in, sorry, bear with me. Here we go, refuge storage here. And again, this would all be part of the service management plan as well that would be agreed. But they're all, I mean, I consulted with your officer, Councillor Hayes, and they had no objection to the site. And as long as we can make sure that it's managed in a way that's appropriate, but there's ample room and areas within the site to safely access those bin stores and take them out so that they can be picked up.
It's not so much, Simon, the accessibility, it is the
Yeah.
management, because as a question, our problems in other areas have been the management not supplying what they stated in the conditions. Will we have strong enough conditions that the management control?
Yeah, I mean, the service management agreement is something that we have full control over. So when I consult with Andy, if it's Andy, or with your colleagues in waste, and they're not happy with that, then we don't have to approve the condition. So we have full control over that. And if it's something you wanted me to talk to you about at some point, when that comes in, if it were to be approved,
yes,
then
please.
Don't worry, I'll find you.
Oh, I will come looking.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Burgo.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Just following on Councillor Hayes' design element, can I just ask, Simon?
Yes.
Is this outline planning permission, or is this full planning permission?
This is full plan permission. Sorry if I didn't make that clear.
No, that's okay. Don't worry. I just want to ask. one of the speakers actually made reference to this. In figure 6, this rather big block, may I just be blunt and say it looks a little boring? I was just hoping that if we're going to see this from a distance in Bracknell, could it be a bit more interesting? Is there time that the developer could make this some changes and make it a bit more exciting?
I mean, we've got full control over the materials to be used. Some of the drawings and some of the elevations you've seen in the plans aren't necessarily what it's going to look like in the end. So full control over materials and finishes. We could come up with something like that that would maybe look at slightly different if needed. But I mean, I have to say, from our urban design officer's point of view and mine, I did think that having the slightly different design in buildings was appropriate for the site. But you're also, these buildings were designed to take note of some of the materials used within the borough. So some of them have the sort of red bricks that you get around Binfield, that sort of thing. It's a sort of, like I said, it's a balance between taking note of where it sits within the borough and also provides a sense of place. But yeah, we have control over those materials.
So really the question, just a supplementary so I understand this, you've still got time to make some changes to make that more interesting building to the residents of Bracknell?
I could approve materials that could make it look different to
but
what is
there's no
actually...
structural changes?
No.
Okay.
Councillor Mackenzie-Boyle.
Thank you. Simon, I'm
Hello.
going to be a bore here, I'm sorry. I'm looking at building F and building E.
Let me just
and
find
I'm
this on
looking
this plan.
at the what could be considered deprivation of daylight. I can't quite see how building F is going to get anything at all on one side, and building E it's like a hexagonal. Looking at that as well, I still feel that more should be done somehow to give the daylight little higher priority.
Sorry, I just have to sort of disagree. I can't see how they wouldn't have adequate daylight going into the buildings. There's not much more I can say to that, I'm afraid. And it has been checked by Environmental Health, and also they've had their own daylight study carried out by an expert in that field, and there was nothing raised. Sorry.
Any other questions? Okay, as there's no other questions, I will move the officer's recommendation on page 81.
Supplementary 4 and 5.
As amended by the supplementary papers on pages 4 and 5. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Brossard, thank you very much indeed, Vice Chair. Members, this application is quite exciting. I think that we're having an additional link into Bracknell railway station from the south side, and also a shuttle bus going to and from the town centre. You heard about electric charging points that are all being provided. And its reuse of brownfield site. I mean, you know, part of Bracknell Beaches has been offices for quite a few years, but over the course of time, those offices have become empty and unused. I think that there's quite a few of those offices now that are vacant, and I think this is quite an imaginative use of that area, and it opens up the south of Bracknell Station to you know, the south of the borough effectively. With one of the questions that I did ask the officer was about traffic movements, and I'm quite pleased to see that overall, with the extant use of the planning permission that's there at the moment for the offices and commercial use that's there, this actually will produce less vehicle movements than what is allowed at the moment. So that's always got to be you know, a useful feature. Does the seconder wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just briefly to reiterate what you said, it was very clear from the photographs that Simon had presided that these commercial buildings were redundant and cannot realistically be resurrected. So I think what is proposed, I think, is entirely appropriate. we appreciate that there was a shortfall in affordable housing, but the viability test has been undertaken. There will be 43 properties or residences which will be classed as affordable. What I also like within the scheme is that on the ground floor there'll be a commercial and community activity. And I think that is going to be helpful with regard to the flats, with regard to sustainability. Hopefully that there'll be a convenience store or something like that that avoids people having to walk or potentially to drive to the town centre to get their essentials. I think overall, on balance, I think it is an appropriate scheme. I quite like the grass, Councillor Birch commenter raised the question on the grass roofs, and I think that from point of view of biodiversity and such like is an important consideration. So it does have my support. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Councillor Virgo.
Just very quickly and briefly, I think it's quite exciting design, and I commend those people who've worked on it. The benefit obviously outweighs the negative, there's no doubt about it, which we didn't see earlier in the applications presented to us. But I would ask that, you know, I just always frightened that blocks look like blocks, you know, and that's the thing that always gets me. So I would just say that, you know, let's let Simon be a bit more with the developers, be a bit more imaginative with bricks, colours, whatever, and let's make it a little bit more airy and interesting and not just a standard block, because I think that's rather depressing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Councillor Mrs. Hay.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I'm pleased that we've looked at the buildings, and I'm sure that they will be pleased to be looking at my new depot site as well, and all my new vehicles going in and out of there. As long as I will support this on the condition that Simon will realise I will be coming to check the measurements and such. Okay, thank you.
Watch out, the dot's coming. Councillor Turrell.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I think a significant feature of this application is the opening up the access to the railway station from the south, and I think that will help a lot of people in the area as well as on the site. Thank you.
Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Virgo. More greening would be lovely on the side of the flats, introducing balconies, if we're going to have some balconies there. Talked about Juliet balconies before. So something that would contribute to our climate change targets, and that would help, I think, make it a little bit more presentable.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Okay, as nobody's really spoken against it, Councillor Virgo, I will ask the officer perhaps to consult with you when they're looking at materials for the building, if that fits with your request. And as nobody has really spoken against this application, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour to approve, please show. And those against? The motion's there's 2 abstentions, I believe. That's carried.
Mr. Chairman, would you excuse me?
Yeah. If anybody needs to leave, we've been going for 2.5 hours, so I'm going to propose that we just have a 5-minute break. It's now 12:20. We will reconvene at 12:25. Thank you. Yeah, should we kick off? I think we're waiting for our traffic officer to return. Okay, let's crack on. Okay, thank you very much. We'll now reconvene the meeting, and the next item on the agenda is item number 7, which is Lavinia. Basha.
Good afternoon. This is Basha Polnick speaking, and I'm presenting the next 3 items. So members will recall that this application was deferred from the advisory committee meeting in August of last year for a construction management plan to be submitted and considered by officers. The application was considered again in March of this year when the recommendation for approval was not upheld by the advisory planning committee, and therefore the application has come back to the planning committee for a decision. If I can refer members to the supplementary report, this gives an update on the numbers of objections received, which is now 152 in total, plus 1 additional one which was received after the publication of a supplementary report yesterday. The additional objections raise no new issues to those already contained in the officer report. So to recap the details of the application, this is an application for prior approval under Class AA, Part 20 of Schedule 2 of the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development Order. As with all prior approval applications, the principle of development is considered to be permitted development, provided certain criteria are met and the planning matters the local planning authority can have regard to is specified within the relevant class of the GPDO. Class 20 allows additional floors above the existing buildings to be constructed to contain dwellings. Class AA specifically applies to circumstances where the existing buildings are in commercial use or a mix of commercial and residential use on a specific date. There are no maximum numbers of units which can be created. So in this particular application, the proposal is to add 2 more floors to this 3-storey former office building, which currently contains 69 flats, creating an additional 42 1- and 2-bedroom units. So if we just have a look at the plans, this is the site layout, and I think the case officer has referred to the shape of the building as being a bit of a boomerang shape. So we have parking around the building as well as in the basement. To the northwest, we have the leisure centre and the roundabout with a Bagshot Road. This is the existing building. And this is the proposed building. So at the moment we can see that the existing building is 3 stories in height and 2 additional stories are proposed, giving the total height of a building of 21 metres. So at the moment it's just over 14 metres in height. And these are the other elevations. This is the proposed floor plan for the 4th floor. And the 5th floor. Sorry, the 3rd and 4th floors. And here we have some photographs of the existing building. So we can see it's mainly brick built with some stone features and glazing, and these features will be continued further up the building. This is the main entrance from Uplarden Way into the site. And again, we can see the main entrance to the right here and the surface car parking. And that's another view. And before we have a question on bin stalls, this is the bin storage area. And finally, this is the construction management plan that has been submitted and considered by officers. So the assessment under Class AA Part 20, Schedule 2 of the GPDO is contained at paragraph 9.7 of the officer's report. Paragraph 9.9 contains the matters which can be considered by the decision maker. These being, and they're quite specific, A, transport and highway implications, B, air traffic and defence asset impacts of the development, C, contamination risk in relation to the development, D, flooding risks in relation to the development, E, the external appearance of a building, including the principal elevation and any side elevation that fronts a highway, F, the impact of any works permitted by subparagraph 1 or D of Class AA, G, provision of adequate natural light to all habitable rooms of the new dwelling houses, H, impact upon the amenity of the existing building and neighbouring premises, including overlooking privacy and the loss of light, I, impact of noise from any commercial premises of the intended occupiers of the new dwelling houses, J, impacts of the introduction of or an increase in the residential use of the premises in the area on the carrying out of any a trade, business or any other use of land in the area. K, whether the siting of a building, whether because of the siting of the building, the development will impact on a protected view, and that's specified in the directions relating to protected vistas, and where the development meets the fire risk condition, the fire safety impacts on the intended occupants of the building. So the development plan, including the Bracknell Town Neighbourhood Plan and the MPPF, are relevant insofar as they relate to these matters. Now turning to the material considerations. So looking at the external appearance of a building, one of the considerations that the decision maker can take into account is the external appearance of a building. So this is under section E. So the design has been revised to introduce more glazing between the brick vertical sections, which replicates the lower portion of the building. The external appearance is therefore considered to have a cohesive appearance and considered to be in keeping with the external appearance of the building. Now turning to overlooking privacy and loss of light. There has been much concern expressed around the potential overlooking from the proposal. The nearest properties are located to the east over 30 metres away. There are no new windows proposed on this eastern elevation, with the result that there would be no direct overlooking of neighbouring properties. Given the distances and orientation of the nearest properties situated at 90 degrees to the proposal, it is the officer's opinion that the proposed extension would not have an overbearing impact on the amenities of neighbouring residents. Thinking about disturbance during building works, many of the objections have referred to disturbance caused by building works, especially on the existing residents of Lavinia. Whilst they have my sympathy, the principle of the extension is permitted by the GPDO, and as such would not be a reason for refusal in its own right. Concerns about this prompted members to request a construction management plan. This has been submitted and details how the development will be undertaken whilst keeping noise disturbance and dust to a minimum. Noisy works are specified as only permissible between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. and at no time at weekends or public holidays. The applicant has confirmed that there are sufficient parking spaces within the site to comply with the council's parking standards for all existing residents, site personnel, deliveries and turning. Officers acknowledge that unfortunately the construction management plan cannot rule out all disturbance and nuisance. However, officers have done their best to ensure that the impacts are reduced as much as possible, and environmental health officers have reviewed the document and raised no objection. As a result of the tragedy at Grenfell, the GBDO has been amended to consider fire risk for this type of application where the floor level of the top floor exceeds 18 metres. In this case, the floor level of the top floor is 17.3 metres, which is marginally below the 18 metres requirement for a fire risk statement. Nevertheless, one has been submitted by the applicant and considered at paragraphs 9.37 to 9.43 of the agenda. And this concludes that all the issues referred to will be considered and administered under building regulations, for whom the Royal Berkshire Fire and Rescue Service are a statutory consultee. Councillors will also recall that a scheme for a previous two-storey extension was refused by this committee and subsequently dismissed at appeal. This was submitted under a full application where all matters could be taken into account, including impact upon the character of the area. The inspector dismissing the appeal considered that the increase in height would, when viewed from the east, would introduce a form of development that would appear out of scale with and harmful to the character and appearance of the surrounding area. Since then, Part 20 of the GPDO has been introduced, which changes how the scheme can be considered. The appeal was dismissed on the impact of the proposal upon the character and appearance of the area, in particular of Blarden Way. However, under this prior notification application, the proposal can only be assessed on the limited criteria as set out in paragraph 9.9 of the officer's report. Impact upon the character is not a consideration which can be considered under this prior notification process. So in conclusion, the principle of development is permitted under national legislation and under the GPDO. The proposal is considered to meet the criteria of Class AA, Part 20, Schedule 2 of the GPDO. Having assessed the proposal against the considerations under paragraph AA2, such as design and appearance on the elevations of the building, the privacy and amenities of neighbouring properties, and highway safety, the application is considered to be acceptable. The submitted construction management plan is conditioned to mitigate the impact of development as much as possible. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions listed on pages 105 and 106 of the agenda, as amended by the supplementary report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Basha. Members, as you heard from the officer earlier, this application was indeed considered by the advisory committee of this planning committee and therefore had to come back to the physical meeting, of course, which this is. So you need to bear that in mind. But do you have any questions for the officer, please? Councillor Turrell.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just at 940 of the report, it refers to questions about cladding. Can you give the current status of that? Do there still remain questions, or do you consider those to have been resolved?
I believe that those matters have been resolved.
And with the fire regulations, the 18 metres, I think many people would have considered that 18 metres would refer to the height of the building. So it's noteworthy that it's actually the height of the top floor. There appears to be some doubt cast on that at 9:42. Are you satisfied that that doubt has been cleared up?
Yes, that is correct. You know, the GPDO with this type of application is quite specific. So the agent, and we can see from the plans, the height of the uppermost floor level is below the 18-metre requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. You'll probably say this is nothing to do with planning, but I'm going to ask a question in case it is. The apartment is a mix of private owners and rental owners. Do they have a say on this if it were to go ahead? Could they actually refuse to have something built on top of them if they actually owned it, as well as the people that rent it?
A civil matter, I think.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, members? Okay. As there's
Could you bring up the picture of the
Councillor
waste?
Mrs. Hayes.
Thank you, sir. Could you just bring up the picture of the waste area again, just for clarity? Oh. I hope so.
Yeah, it is quite a large area. If you'd like, I can go to the plan and show you,
if you could,
the extent
please,
of
just
it.
for clarification.
Okay. Right, it's on this plan. So the bin storage area is this area here. So as you can see, basically it would occupy, you know, the equivalent of quite a few parking spaces.
And it's under management then, or there will be conditioned with management?
I think the management of the bin storage area will be no different than the current management of the building.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so there's no other questions. It normally falls to me to move this off a recommendation. Would anybody like to move it? Well, then I will have to move it. If there's a seconder. There is no seconder. Councillor Turrell, I understand you have an alternative motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I do. I don't know whether that can be put on the screen, but basically what I would move is that the proposed design, by virtue of its appearance, does not respect the character or form of the original host building, resulting in an unbalanced and overbearing appearance. The proposal is therefore considered to be contrary to policies CS7 of the Core Strategy DPD, Saved Policy EN20 of the Bracknell Forest Local Plan, and H08 of the Bracknell Town Neighbourhood Plan. I thank members for their forbearance in...
Hold on, I'm happy to second that, okay. Councillor. No, you can now speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, it's, I was just going to say I thank members for their forbearance on this one. It is a complex matter, but I think, as you can see, it has attracted a considerable number of objections. 152 is no small number. The effect on the living conditions of people in flats that they've bought, they're probably the most expensive purchase that any of us makes, is aimed to be dealt with by a management scheme. I think it's very difficult. I do not see how one can gauge accurately the length of time it takes to put something on top of a pre-existing building without causing considerable disruption. And I think we have to bear in mind that people don't just work between 9 to 5. There are such people as shift workers, for example, the key workers that we've all relied upon to get us through the pandemic in recent years. If you're doing a night shift, believe me, from personal experience, I can tell you, you need your sleep, and your sleep is during the day. I think we've also seen, might add also that quite near to the building, that building in Ivor Court, a programme of works there to refit the building was estimated to take a year, and in fact took 2.5 years, and involved decanting the occupants from there. That is considerable disruption, and I don't think it's reflected in what is here. As to the effect on the design of the building, it's already 14 metres high. This makes it another nearly 50% higher. It's already big in the scene, and you know, there are other buildings of similar size nearby. This would make it considerably bigger, considerably taller, and the effect of those extra floors cannot be underestimated. So that, in essence, is the reason for my moving this motion, and I'd be grateful for everybody's support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turrell. As seconder, I'll speak now. I think I'm going to support this motion to refuse this application. I think we have a duty to protect residents, not only because of the noise and the construction, but the fact of the matter is that people these days work from home. So, you know, to be able to just restrict any noisy works between 9 and 5 becomes a bit of a misnomer, really. The fact is that because this is a prior approval application, we can't ask for any affordable housing. In fact, we couldn't ask for any affordable housing on the previous application when this was turned from offices into accommodation. And as Councillor Tuller has already mentioned, this building is already 14 metres high. The additional height is going to be overbearing, it's going to be out of keeping, and it is going to cause overlooking. And I think it's going to be an eyesore into what's already a very nice area at the top of Oakland Way. So I'm happy to submit to support the member's motion to refuse. Any other member wish to speak? As no other members spoken, do you wish to sum up, Councillor Turrell, or do you want to go to the vote?
Briefly, to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your support, for your point on affordable housing. Yes, there's no affordable housing whatsoever coming forward in this, in what would really be a highly sustainable location. Many transport links there. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favour of the alternative motion, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
We move on then to agenda item 8, which is 53 Upper Broadmoor Road, Crowthorne, Basher.
Thank you. This application is being reported to the Planning Committee at the request of Councillor Mackenzie Boyle. So if we just have a look at the plans. As we can see, this is a semi-detached dwelling on the northern side of Upper Broadmoor Road, which has a very long garden. This is the block plan, which if I just zoom into that, I can explain the proposal. So there are various elements to the extensions that are proposed here. The first part would be for a rear dormer in this area here at second floor level, an infill extension here. Yeah, sure. That's better. Yeah. So this is the position of the proposed dormer. This is the infill extension. And then there's an existing conservatory which would be demolished and replaced by a single-storey rear extension, which will be slightly longer than the existing conservatory. And in addition, there'd also be the porch to the front would be demolished and replaced by canopy, and also some roof lights added to the roof. I'm just trying to minimise this. Right, so here we have the existing first floor plan. No, I know. This is the proposed first floor plan, yes. So this is the existing first floor plan. And as we can see, yeah, I'll just scroll up here. What we're looking at is this area here. So as we can see, you have to walk through the bathroom to get to the to bedroom 3. Right. What I'm having problems with is to actually minimise this now. Yeah, no, that's all right. Let's go back to here. Okay, so this is the existing first floor plan. This is the existing ground floor plan. This is the first floor proposals. So the existing bedroom would be enlarged, encompassing the existing bathroom area. A new bathroom would be in this area here, which is an existing bedroom, and then that bedroom would be replaced at second floor level. And this is the proposed ground floor plan. These are the proposed elevations. So that's the rear elevation. So we can see it's a flat roof dormer, and the extension is in this area here. And then we can see that there are level differences between the host building and the neighbouring property. That's up front. So this is the existing porch, which would be demolished, and this is the canopy and the roof light within the roof itself. This is the existing side elevation. This is where the infill extension would be. The conservatory will be demolished and replaced by the single-storey rear extension, and then we have a flat roof dormer. We also have a number of additional windows in the side elevation of the original dwelling, but in fact a reduction, as we can compare existing side elevation to the proposed side elevation, a reduction in windows in this area here. That is the view from the other side. And now moving on to some photographs. So this is the porch, which would be demolished. This is general, the street view, as it were. The parking to the front. This is a view taken from probably the bedroom at first floor level. So we can see the garden of the application site, the conservatory just there, that's going to be demolished, and another view looking towards the neighbouring garden. Here we can see the conservatory. It's probably worth noting while we have this photograph up that not only the application site but the neighbouring property on both sides have flat roofed extensions, so it's considered that the dormer window would not be out of keeping with the character of the area. And some more views there. A closer view of the neighbouring property. They have a number of windows. These two are in fact bathroom windows. That is the alleyway, giving access to the rear garden at the application site. And some more views there. So no new bedrooms would be created, and therefore there's no requirement to provide additional parking. The block plan has been amended to no longer show 2 parking spaces because the parish council commented on that. The site is within the settlement boundary where the principle of development is acceptable, subject to no adverse impact on the amenity of neighbouring occupiers or upon the character and the visual amenity of the area. In terms of the impact on the neighbours, the 3 elements of a proposal at ground floor level and the new side-facing windows at first floor level, in terms of the impact on the neighbours, 3 of the elements of the proposal are at ground floor level, and the new side-facing window at first floor level would be obscure glazed. There will be no adverse impact in terms of loss of light, nor is the proposal, whilst visible to neighbours, considered to be unduly overbearing. In terms of the design, the dormer would be flat roof, spanning across part of a roof. There is, as we saw in the photographs, already flat-roofed first-floor extensions at the application site and both neighbouring properties, and as such, it's not considered to be out of keeping with the character of the area. The design of the ground floor extensions and porch canopy are considered to be acceptable. So in conclusion, it's considered that the proposed development results in no adverse impact on the character and appearance of the area. It wouldn't adversely affect residential amenity, and therefore the recommendation is for approval, subject to the conditions on page 117 of the agenda as amended by the supplementary report. Thank you.
Thank you, Basha. Any questions, members? Councillor Brossard.
Basha, can you bring up the floor plan of the 2nd floor with regard to the 3rd bedroom, which I think incorporates a shower room, just to have another look at it? That's, the upper floor, right, okay then, so that's bedroom, fine. There are no fire regulations, are there, in terms of evacuation from the 2nd floor?
That we dealt with under building regulations.
Okay, fine. Right. Fine. No, fine. Thank you, Chairman.
Any other questions, members? Okay, as there's no other questions, I'll move the officer's recommendation, which is on page 117
on page 6.
As amended by the supplementary report on page 6. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Vice Chair. Members, this application, as you heard, has been called before us by the local councillor. It is, I think, to be kind, an interesting use of applications and flat roof extensions. And I think that perhaps we may have more objections to go on if properties either side weren't similarly extended as well, and it is quite a long plot on this land. So those are the things to bear in mind. Second, wish to speak?
Only very briefly to say, Chairman, that it's clear the case officer has had discussions with the applicant, because my understanding is the number of bedrooms will remain the same as previously. Interpreting it, there would have been an additional bedroom, which would then have created a parking issue consideration. So given the negotiations that have taken place, I will be supporting the recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? All those in favour to approve, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. We move on then to agenda item 9, which is Whitegates, St Mark's Road. Basha.
Chairman, I just need a few minutes just to find the presentation. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It was deep down in the SharePoint folders. So this application relates to a detached property in St Mark's Road at the junction of Woodies Close. It is currently used as a bed and breakfast guest house together with residential accommodation for the applicant. Currently, the residential elements consist of a kitchen, living room and 3 ensuite bedrooms for the applicant's family, whilst the guest house has 6 ensuite bedrooms with a dining room on the ground floor. The application is reported to the Planning Committee as it has received more than 5 objections. Since the supplementary report was published yesterday, 1 additional objection has been received from Woodies Close and Binfield community, raising issues that are referred to in the officer report, and also commenting and objecting for the reasons that St Mark's Road has a high usage and is used as a rut run and has already experienced a high number of accidents. In addition, it would have a negative impact on the residents and children of Woodies Close, which may lead to increased accidents. The proposal has been amended from a previous application which was dismissed at appeal and aims to overcome previous concerns. So here we can see it's a corner property. Woodies Close is just to the north here. Right. So this is the existing first floor plan. I'll just make that slightly smaller. And this is the existing ground floor plan. So we can see on this plan that there are already guest suites on the ground floor and first floor. Hopefully that's going to be all a bit clearer. And these are the proposed extensions. So the areas in darker grey are the proposed extensions at ground floor level, including a canopy to the front. And then these are the extensions at first floor level. So we can see on the first floor plan that there will be no new windows coming closer to 1 Woodies Close to the rear, because these are existing windows. There will be 2 new side-facing windows, as we can see here and here, but I'll comment on those later. In terms of elevations, these are the existing elevations. And then that's the existing elevation. And these are the proposed elevations. So we can see both side boundaries. So at ground floor level, it would extend to both side boundaries. And also there'll be bay window at first floor level here, and then we can see the two-storey extension in this area here. That is one of the side elevations. That's a rear elevation, and then that's the other side elevation. Okay, so this is the existing front elevation, the existing side elevation onto Woody's Close. This is looking towards the neighbour on the other side. So we can see parking to the front. This is a view of the neighbouring property. And this is the boundary treatment between the neighbouring property and the application site itself. So the current proposal is for a two-storey side and part rear extension, and single-storey side and rear extensions to extend five of the 6 existing bed sits, 2 of which will include sitting and small kitchen facilities. The proposal also extends 2 of the existing bedrooms to the dwelling house element occupied by the proprietor. The accommodation would remain as a 3-bedroom dwelling for the proprietor and his family, and 6 ensuite bed and breakfast rooms. To the rear, the property would be extended by 2 metres at first floor level, and at ground floor level by 1 to 4 metres. To the side, the ground floor would be extended by 1.5 metres, whilst the first floor would be extended by 3.1 metres. In addition, a bay window is proposed to front elevation and a canopy. So, as there will be no increase in bedrooms, there is no requirement for additional parking. The primary issues are impact on the living conditions of neighbours and the impact on the character of the area. One of the previous reasons for refusal was the increased overlooking of One Woody's Close to the rear. The current proposal, whilst it includes rear extensions, would not bring any first floor windows closer to this property, overcoming the previous reason for refusal. However, the proposal would include a new side-facing window at first floor level, or its side-facing windows, one of which would be looking towards the driveway of a neighbouring property, Whispers. At the front of the property is considered to be least private and also viewable from the street, and therefore there will be no direct views of into any habitable room windows, which are on the other side of the garage. This window would not result in significant loss of privacy that would warrant refusal of the application. The design of the extensions is considered to be acceptable, and as such would not be detrimental to the character or visual amenity of the area. So in light of these comments, the recommendation is for approval, subject to the conditions on page 127 of the agenda and as amended by the supplementary report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Basha. Does it make a difference that this is being marketed as a hotel?
I believe that the facilities, I mean, it's described here, and the facilities described by the applicant are bed and breakfast.
Well, according to the internet, this is being marketed as a 4-star hotel.
Right.
I've got it just come up on Google. White Gates 4-star hotel. Does that make a difference on planning issues?
I mean, how they market the property is up to them. In terms of, it would be a decision as to what use class it falls within. Hotel is a different use class, it's C1, but that is not what is, well, actually that is what is the application is for. So the application is for the existing use being C3 and part C1, which includes hotel use. So in that sense, there's no change.
sorry, is there any change in parking provision requirements? Bearing in mind there is an existing residential use which will require 3 parking spaces. Are there any differences if we're looking at C1 with regards to the additional properties?
I'm sorry, that would have been a useful question to have in advance, Chair. So apologies, I have not had the opportunity to look at this in any other way than that is presented in the report.
Sorry.
I was just going to add that, in the context of the highways requirements, the application is not for a change of use to C1, it's for retention of the existing use as Part C3 and Part C1. So there shouldn't be any implications in terms of parking requirement.
Okay. Any other questions? Vice Chair.
Chairman, Basha, point of clarification. If there was to be a change from the proposal, which is basically an enlargement of the existing property without an increase in the number of bedrooms, were it to be determined subsequently that an additional bedroom had been created, would that be a matter for enforcement as opposed to a new planning application?
It would be investigated by enforcement, and obviously if it required planning permission, then an application would be submitted. I mean, certainly for the bed and breakfast element, the proposal needs to be built in accordance with the approved plans. So if it's not built in accordance with the approved plans, then it will be investigated.
Councillor Mrs Hayes.
I think I was answering it. It was I was looking at page 122. Whilst 10 parking spaces are shown, in reality, this is what 8 parking spaces are more realistic. Is there a requirement for disabled parking and such?
Through you, Chair. The application as currently proposed does not create any additional bedrooms in either the residential nor the C1 hotel/guest house use, and therefore there is no requirement for additional parking over and above what is already present on the site.
Any other questions, members? Okay, as there's no other questions, I will move the officer's recommendation on page 127
Supplementary 6.
as amended by the supplementary report on page 6. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Brossard. This is difficult, this one, because it's obviously being promoted as a hotel. However, you know, a bed and breakfast hotel is, I suppose, is mute. It's a C1 use. I would, if this application is approved, highlight to officers to make sure that we make a visit on this property to make sure that it has been built as per the approved plans and that there are no additional properties. Seconder wish to speak? Any other member wish to speak?
Only that I agree with you, sir, with regards to if conditions or something that we watch the construction.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed, members, and I think it was quite pleasant, but I'm sorry to have taken up most of your Friday. I now declare the meeting closed.
Harry, could you let us know when the stream has ended, please?